Hey everybody, today I'm going to be talking about why it's not a great idea to be stacking a bunch of kick samples into your production and some possible solutions if you feel like there's no other way to go about getting that sound. Now I know everybody wants to get a really huge kick sound. Sometimes you got a kick drum that's got a lot of low end, and then you got another one with maybe some cool noise or some room sound on it, so you figure, oh, I'll just put them together and I'll get this really big kick sound. What actually usually ends up happening in the long run, especially when you get this to a mixer, is that you're going to end up getting your kick to sound a lot smaller. And let me explain this to you. Check this out. Look at this. Okay, so what I've done here is I've grabbed some samples from 3 different projects I worked on where people had stacked their kicks. Here's one, here's another, here's another. And just so you know, sometimes I get projects where people have stacked 3 or 4 kick drums on top of each other trying to achieve some sort of sound. But I'm just going to leave it with 2 kick drums in these examples just to simplify things. And before we get too deep into it, I'm going to be showing these plugins here and talking about phase. And the phase button is this little thing right here. You'll see with that little circle with a line through it. Just so you actually understand what phase is, I'm going to give you an example visually here so you can understand this. If I was to reverse phase on this bottom kick drum, I'm hitting that button. What it's actually doing is this. I'm going to just do it with a rendering plugin. That's what phase is doing. You see how it's just reversing the waveform? That's what reversing the phase is. And it has a lot to do with why sounds that are combined together sound a certain way. So right here, we're going to take a look at these 2 kicks. And keep in mind a couple things. You're not going to hear much difference unless you're listening on a pretty good system with some good low end on it. And also, it being a little out of context. I'm not playing the music that's going along with this. I just want to concentrate on the kick drum. So check it out. Here's the sound that I got. Here's the top kick. And here's the bottom kick. So you can hear there's a lot of nice low end on this bottom kick. I think they added this top kick here to give it some snap. But it's actually, when I bring that in, it seems to take away a little bit of the low end. And you can see right here, it was out of phase. You see how this kick is out of phase from the bottom one. Now the waveforms are pointing at each other. If I do this with a rendering plugin, you know, it would look like this. And you can hear that the sound changes too. But you don't want to be rendering this stuff all the time. You got to be able to work quicker. So what you do is you actually come over here to your plugin and you reverse the phase on this kick. Gives you some better low end there, right? But it's also doing something else to the low end that I'm not really crazy about. It's like it's adding some low end, but it's also taking some away. As you see, it's not equally out of phase all the way across because they're at different pitches. None of these kick drums are going to be exactly the same pitch, so the phase is going to change as it goes through. Even if you're flipping the phase, as the note progresses, going to phase out at different points. So, you know, one of the possible solutions here is obviously find a better kick drum sound, something with a low end and the snap you want in the top end, or maybe you can try doing some EQ stuff. So let me go back to this. You know, I could do something like put a high-pass filter on this top one. All we really want here is the snap from that thing, right? So if I do that, it's kind of getting more of the original sound from that lower kick drum. That's one solution there. Here's some other kick drums that were sent to me in a session. Check it out. Here's what we got. Top kick is like this. Little noise in there. Bottom one's kind of more the meat, the low end. And you know, my job is always to figure out what is the client's intention. Like, you know, where are they trying to get the meat of their sound from? And to me, it sounds like probably that thicker one's what they started out with, and then they wanted that noise and that snap once again from the top end. Problem is, phase isn't quite right either. If you notice right here, you can see it's almost directly out of phase right here. But once again, as it goes further down and the note lasts longer, the phase changes, meaning that the tone's going to change a little bit. It's a very short amount of time, but it actually will make a difference. Check it out. If you listen to it by itself, and then I bring in this other one, it's phasing out a little bit of the low end. So, of course, once again, we can just try flipping the phase. Helps a little. But to me, it still sounds like it's doing something to that original kick drum. Now, this one, I actually tried moving the waveform around a little bit. That's another option, just to try to shift this thing around and just see what it sounds like, you know? I'll do that sometimes. There's an infinite amount of possibilities when you start sliding these things around in relation to each other. And I'm literally only moving it a couple milliseconds or so, or I don't even know how much I moved it. It doesn't really, I was maybe moving it 3-4 milliseconds there, but it'll totally change the sound. That's another thing you can try if you've got to use two different kick drums. In addition to switching the phase, try sliding the files around a little bit in relationship to each other and just see how it changes the sound. It's really huge. But once again, this is a candidate on this particular mix. What I ended up doing was doing another high-pass filter. So that I could still get that noise in there, but still retain more of the low end from the thick kick. This doesn't always work. I mean, sometimes when you start high-pass filtering stuff, it just changes everything in a really bad way, and I'm going to show you on this next one here how that works. This last example here is a little bit more typical of the sort of thing that I get when I'm mixing, and these kick drums are more of a EDM pop thing, so they're not real kick drums, and they've got these really bizarre waveforms, which makes it harder to combine them. And but let me play you what I got. This is what was sent to me right here. You know, it's all right, but there's definitely some low end missing. So here's what I got. Here's the bottom kick. Here's the top kick. And again, it was one of those things I'm like, what's the client's intention? To me, it seems like they probably started with this low kick here. It's got a lot of nice low end on it. It's a little nice snap in the top end. That second kick drum, the one that's on top, sounds like it might have been added for more punch on smaller speakers. It's got a really great punch on it. But when you combine them together, it just seems like there's the bottom one by itself, just doing something. So if I flip the phase on the top kick here, much better low end, right? But it's still doing something strange to the other one. And as you can see here, it's like, look at these waveforms. Like, there's no way to slide this thing around and match these things up. These are just bizarre waveforms. This is a situation where I really felt like he should have either found another sample or just made do with the first one. Because listen, man, it's like, it ain't bad. It just needs a little more punch. And to me, it's more like, you know, solve that with EQ. Come over here, get a little more punch in the chest, and that's going to kind of solve your problem. The point here is that before you start layering a bunch of kicks on top of each other, first try to find a really great sample to begin with, okay? And if you have to layer, if you really feel like you need to layer, you need to spend some time paying attention to the phase and your EQ and things like that, because every time you add kick drums together and anything that has a lot of low frequencies, the phase is going to have a huge impact on the sound. It's not something to take lightly. Another thing to consider that there are sample packs out there that have these little things called I guess, kick enhancers or something like that, where they just got little clicky sounds, these little sounds that are filtered out that are made for the purpose of enhancing your original kick. I'd be more likely to use one of those as opposed to layering a bunch of kicks on top of each other. That's about it for this episode. I hope you got something from it. Make sure to subscribe and come back for more.